Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start our presentation. What we're talking about today is a proactive approach to functional testing, the power of pre-verification. Some housekeeping items. Don't forget to check in to earn the CEU credits. We'll just spend a couple of minutes talking about who we are. My name is Alex Kozinets. I'm a Chief Customer Officer at Facility Grid. Prior to Facility Grid, I spent over 28 years as a mechanical engineer and a commissioning manager working for different engineering firms.
I'm Steven Seller with MIT, turnover and commissioning manager. I've been there approximately 10 years now. Before that, I was doing commissioning for a private company doing BSL-3 and general HVAC equipment. So thank you all for attending.
Here's what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about what pre-verification testing is. We're going to explain the difference between pre-verification testing and functional testing. We'll talk about how to develop pre-verification tests, the benefits of pre-verification tests and how they apply to different team members. We'll talk about the issues that are typically captured during the pre-verification testing process, how to encourage and implement pre-verification testing process, what are the typical process for conducting tests, pre-verification tests. We'll talk about the real-life examples. And Stefan is going to share his experience, and then talk about the key takeaways, and we'll answer your questions. All right, so what are the pre-verification tests? Can you raise hands who knows what pre-verification tests are? All right. So pre-verification tests are basically an opportunity for the project team to conduct a dry run of a functional test. So what happens is the systems go through the installation process, through static testing. The teams will be completing their checklists and the energization checklists, startup checklists, pre-functional checklists. And then there's a time comes when the teams are getting ready for the functional testing. And so pre-verification testing is an opportunity for the project team, and typically for the trade contractors, to conduct the pre-verification tests, which are similar to functional tests, and basically to make sure that they're truly ready for the functional testing that is conducted by the, being overseen by the commissioning provider. Typically, pre-verification testing is conducted not on every piece of equipment. Typically, you would select, or the team would select, one-of-a-kind equipment. They may go for just large equipment, critical equipment. Some jurisdictions or some entities, government entities, require the pre-verification testing to be conducted on every piece of equipment. Again, like I said, the scripts for the pre-verification tests are basically identical to the functional tests. And again, it's a chance for the trade contractors to really validate their readiness for the formal tests that will be conducted by the commissioning provider.
So yeah, Alex started talking about the difference between the pre-verification test and the functional performance test. So again, it's, pre-verification test is prepared by the commissioning agent, but it's not run by them, because everybody knows on the project, commissioning is the last 2 weeks of the project, right? It's a big block at the end, and that's it, right? So the idea of this test is to run it through its paces as if it was the commissioning agent, but there's no consequences. So, if things come out of that, RFIs get generated, there's still time to answer that. With 2 weeks left, we want to move into the building. So we don't want to have any hiccups or anything. So by the time we do functional testing, the test passed, it's a dog and pony show, everybody walks out, we're all happy. So it's a chance for the contractors to really kick the tires, I say. So it helps identify issues, and readiness, right? Everybody thinks that they're ready. They pull the wire, electrical says we're ready. They're not terminated, or they could not be terminated. They might not be terminated in the right place. So it's a chance to actually check the whole system, not just a particular trade.
Also, to add to this, one of the biggest differences between the functional testing and pre-verification testing is then what happens after that. What happens after a failed functional test. After a failed functional test, there's finger pointing, there's project delays, there's always, there could be, not always, could be change order. What happens after the pre-verification testing? It's basically, again, because it's an opportunity to pre-test. So if the system is failed during the pre-verification testing, that is an opportunity to address any of the failure, to address any discrepancies between what was programmed and what the sequence operation required ahead of the functional test, okay?
Yeah, and the functional test is just the formal commissioning step, right? Where the commissioning agent goes in and runs it through its paces, and either it fails or it passes, or we get deficiencies that get addressed after. So that's been a project requirement for a long time. So this test is different in that way, that it's not conducted by the commissioning agent. They might be there to witness it and help develop RFIs or questions, but it's more of a chance for the whole construction team to get together. The CMs depend a lot on the contractors, and this is a chance to get everybody in the same page to test it. So like we said before, the development of these pre-verification test sheets are done by the commissioning agent. So it's part of their documentation. They're using the approved sequences with changes and bulletins and everything else that come in there. But there's a lot of things that aren't captured on a functional performance test sheet, such as integration with fire dampers, integration with fire alarm systems, security systems, things like that. They all say they're ready, but when you come to test, oh, I didn't realize that the damper's closed because Johnny didn't power the fire alarm panel. So it's a chance to actually see what's ready and to get a good opportunity to test it as if us being the owners will accept it. So, a lot of work goes into it. It's a step-by-step procedure that obviously the commissioning agent gives out beforehand. So everybody should have it, and they should just follow the steps. If there's questions, like anything else, they should have addressed it before that day. But even if they follow the examples and have questions, at least it's not a true functional test. So you still have time to talk about it. It's not the end of the world at this point. But 3 months from now, it might be. So it's all just an opportunity for people to make sure ready is ready. And that's another big thing in commissioning. Everybody's definition of ready here is something else. So
let's talk about the benefits, right? So who benefits from the pre-verification testing? Well, let's start with the general contractor. Now, the reason I'm starting with the general contractor is because if you think about this, who has the biggest risk on the project? And always think about the risk. Commissioning providers have zero risk, right? Because if I came to a functional test, I ran something, it failed, I acknowledge that, I'm going to let the owner know something failed, and I'm going to ask the general contractor to call me back when it's ready. If I'm a good participant, I'm going to help the contractor address the issues, but again, I have no risk on the project. The biggest risk resides with GC. So the general contractor benefits from knowing as early as possible whether the systems are ready or not through this pre-verification test. So if you think about this, how does general contractor knows that something is ready? You'd be sitting in a commissioning meeting, you have GC in front of you, trade contractors in front of you, and you ask them questions, okay, Mr. GC, when are you going to be ready? When can I come in to do functional testing? And I say, well, 2 weeks from now. All right, but how do they know that something is ready?
Right.
How? They're going to ask their trade contractor, are you ready? What response are you going to get? Well, I think we are, or well, I guess we are ready. And that is typically how they know. Pre-verification testing lets them actually witness the testing that's conducted by their trades and really assess the level of readiness for the testing. And the most important part is, and I've never been through a functional test that everything goes perfect, like everything, right? There's always something that comes up. Well, whatever comes up, you want it to come up as early as possible, right? So if during the functional testing you determine that Stephen says something is not integrated together, well, if you learn about this 2 months or maybe a month ahead of the functional testing, to repair something, to address something costs much less. And again, it benefits GC. Trade contractors. Well, obviously they benefit a lot because why? After every failed test, you're going to sit down with them and you're going to discuss whose fault it is. And guess whose fault it is most of the time? Controls contractor, right? Controls contractor is most of the time is at fault for failed test. Well, you didn't program properly. You didn't read the sequence operation properly, okay? Now, if we're honest with each other, is it always their fault? No, it's not. Why? Because the changes can occur to the sequence operations, for example, at any point of time. We've probably all seen drawings coming from the design teams that, let's say there's a air-cooled chiller in a project, and you read the sequence operations and you wonder like where it came from. Where it came from a different project that had a similar system. It was copy-paste, right? And the controls contractor does their submittal. How do they put their submittal together? It's a copy-paste from the sequence operations. How do you know it's copy-paste? It's the same spelling errors, right? So you could definitely tell that. Now, the person who puts together the submittal is not the same person who is going to be programming the sequence operation 2 years later, right? That's a completely different person. So the person who is actually programming it, and let's say they're working for MIT, and they've done 20 projects for MIT previously, they look at what the design team provided, and they're like, no, that's not how MIT wants it. So they're going to program it the way MIT wants it, right? But the commissioning provider will only learn about this during functional testing. And even though it's programmed the way MIT likes it,
that we might like it, yeah.
or might like it, it is not
how it was designed.
The FTT, yeah. Right? So it's a perfect, and then you could the other cases, right? When there's an RFI comes in, goes to the design team, they make a change to sequence operation. Commissioning provider is not notified, and the functional test script's still the same. No, they haven't updated it because they didn't know there was a change. And again, this comes up in functional testing. You have to fail it because it doesn't meet that requirement. And then even if during the functional testing, you realize that what's programmed is correct, but you can't proceed because you don't have a stamp or approval from the design team, the engineer of record. You can't make that decision. They have to approve. Anyway, so there's so many different cases, but sometimes it is their fault, right? But again, I still think it's everyone. Yeah. Like percentage-wise, it's probably equal percentage for everyone.
Right. They just get the brunt of it because you're seeing all the errors through the front end, right, on the BAS. So they get the brunt of, oh, it's your problem, even though it might not be. So that's always been an issue too that we see. So it's careful to make sure that you know what the problem is, so you know the right people and the right organizations that could address the issues.
Right, and then so when the pre-verification testing is happening, then think of that if the controls contractor coming to the functional testing, it's like an open book exam. They've seen the functional test. Well, first of all, if you don't do pre-verification testing, how many times you show up to do functional testing, and that's the first time the contractor, mechanic contractor, controls contractor, first time that they're seeing that script, right? So basically, again, there's tons of benefits for them. Commissioning provider, Well, obviously, right? If I'm the commissioning provider and I am getting ready for my functional test, I want that to be successful as well, right? My success is not just because I can come up with a, huge list of issues. No. My job there is to validate, right? My job is not necessarily, I'm not doing quality control. My job is not to find issues. My job is to validate that the quality control process, which is owned by GC and trades, is successful. If I fail a test, a functional test, it means that the quality control process failed. So pre-verification testing becomes a part of the quality control process, right? And for me as a commissioning provider, knowing ahead of time, that maybe there was an RFI, maybe there was a change of sequence operation, maybe the controls contractor programmed something that the way the owner wanted it. So I wanna know about this ahead of time. I want to have a discussion. I want to bring the owner into that conversation. I want to bring the design team. And again, everybody to be on the same page in terms of what to expect from the functional test. And remember something important is that, we all know commissioning, we all love commissioning, but, for one person, performing activities or writing the test script or how you even write the test script could be different from the way other company does it. So a contractor may be working on one project where the functional testing is being, the test script's written one way, and maybe another project it's different, right? So again, if you do not give opportunity to the contractor to pre-test, to understand how you want them to validate the readiness of system, again, the functional testing will be the first time, and it's highly likely that's not going to succeed. Now, building owner. How does the building owner benefits from it? Well, building owner at the end of the day gets the building, right? And delay in the building, there are liquidated damages or whatever, but when the students coming, right
on March 1st, and having the building ready on March 5th doesn't work. So
right. So liquidated damages, but so what? So where are they going to see? Right. So they still have to be somewhere. So for them to have this opportunity early on to understand the readiness, right?
And it lets us gain confidence that everybody has worked well on the project team, and knowing that we get what we asked for and what was designed and built and verified. So it gives us a lot of confidence. When these tests go well, we take it back to our management group and tell them, hey, we're going to be okay on this building. When you see deer in the headlights, it's like, oh no, we're going to go through this again. Let's see if we can find another place to put these rooms in or these classes in, because we're not going to be ready on time. So that's never a good thing. So,
Right. And but also one thing is, how many times you've been doing the functional testing and somebody comes up, shows up at your test representing the owner, right? The building operator from a building next door, or somebody who's going to be running this building once it's complete, and then starts making comments during the functional testing. It's like, oh no, that's not how we ran that chiller in the building next door, or that's not how the SOP works for this lab, because we have it in the lab next door and it's differently, right? So they're going to start, they can make those comments. And if you make those comments during the functional testing, that's a very bad timing, right? So bringing or inviting at least the owner's personnel to pre-verification testing, again, gives them opportunity to ask the questions early. And so if there's things like this come up, then you want to have a meeting with the design team, right? You need to have the meeting with the trades, the GC, with everybody talks about this and say, yeah, that's actually right. We didn't think about that. We do need to revise
how we do it,
like operation maybe of exhaust fans or BSL facility, right? Or fume hood or something like that. Again, that's an opportunity for the owner. So anyway, as you can see, every project team participant. I didn't add a design team here, but obviously they they're the ones who are stamping everything, right? So it's a good opportunity for them as well. So anyway, pre-verification testing kind of gives opportunity to every project participant to have to voice their opinion, to address any issues that may occur, and all of that again ahead of the formal testing. The earliest you find the issues, right, the less expensive it is to fix them. So think about you testing something and all of a sudden you're realizing that Phoenix valve has a the actuator is fast acting or slow acting, and maybe it was slow, but it actually needs to fast actuating valve, right? So if you can place the order to replace that today, they may have it at the warehouse. Whereas if you place the order 3 weeks from now, when you run the functional test, the formal test, they may not have at the factory. So that's going to delay things. Anyway, so it helps everyone. And I have the battery low here. Somebody forgot to do commissioning.
That's right.
And then so that handshake that occurs at the end of the pre-verification testing, and the system is really ready.
Plus, I know a lot of times in startup, if we don't do this task beforehand, startup nowadays is, we powered up the VFD and it ran, we programmed it. We didn't run it above 25% because the systems aren't ready, but it started up. And the next time it gets started up is the functional test. And then, the speed control doesn't work. The feedback's not right. We're set up for 0 to 5 and my signal's 0 to 10. So a whole bunch of things happen, right? It's just an opportunity for everybody to get their hands on, like we've been stressing this whole time. It's a chance for that. And also to see where the system sits, right? If a pump or a fan runs and it doesn't create the static pressure or the differential it needs, it's going to sign that something else isn't right. Even though you went through the startup, it doesn't mean that the system works right away. The valve's open, balancing wasn't finished, they overrode all the valves. Nobody would know it. Things like that. So it's a chance for everybody to get in line and show everybody that they're competent and did the job that they were asked to do. That's not a picture from one of our buildings, by the way. But it kind of stressed the point. So, it's all the details. Again, that the details, the second point there, are rarely shown on drawings. Not all the interfaces are shown. It's a box that says it shall be done or, to be TBD or whatever. So it's a chance for everybody to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Another thing, too, is making sure that all the startup documentation is there. All the test reports. A lot of times those aren't available until the very end. It's a chance for everybody to see them. I know on the electrical side, it's super critical that the arc flash report gets submitted before you energize and check the ratings of all the breakers, things like that. There's not one project that I've seen where we haven't found issues on. So again, the more eyes on everything beforehand, the better. It's a chance, and it's everybody, right? It's the whole project team, the CM, the GC, all the trades, the commissioning agents involved in it. And it's a chance for any questions from the people in the field to get back to the design team. If RFIs need to be written or SKs need to be drawn, you have a chance still to do it before it becomes crunch time, right? And that's the whole point of trying to get these pre-verification tests set up in advance. And I know, some of you are thinking that's an extra step, but it's not really an extra step. The contractors, the CMs own the work, so it's just another pathway to get there. It should, if you don't do it, then you risk not finishing the project on time. If you do it in a timely manner, and obviously the schedule gets impacted, so it's important to make sure that everybody knows about it throughout the whole project. You can't bring this up at the last minute, so it has to be part of the commissioning plan at the beginning and mentioned all the way through that, hey, we're going to be doing these pre-verification tests, so get ready for it. We're here to help you. There's no consequences, like Alex said. You still have time to go through any issues you find. So we Sure. Yeah, you can scale it down or up. It depends how confident you think or how complicated the systems are. And a lot of this you might find when you go and actually think about doing the pre-verification test, you might find that you can't do the whole script because something's not ready or a floor's not finished and you can't move air there because it's not clean. Like there's always something. So you got to kind of make it realistic for what you're testing. But it's so important to have everybody part of that discussion and making sure that you're ready to do it. So many times I go out and everybody's ready in 5 minutes. We walk away and say, this isn't ready. And they go, why? The electrician's finished. And there's always something. And we're like, we can't do it now. You guys need to finish your work. And then there's meetings. Then it's not pleasant. So we try and avoid that as much as possible.
So we're talking about here the issues that can occur.
Right.
Uncovered during pre-verification testing.
Yes.
So if we did pre-verification testing of the charger,
right, then there'll be slide up there.
Anyway, so the next slide was going to talk about the process of putting together the pre-verification testing.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So again, you know, it's what the commissioning agent uses, step-by-step procedure on all the steps that are required to test out the piece of equipment. And like Alex said before, you don't have to do pre-verification tests on every single piece of equipment. We're not going to do it 500 VAV boxes. But you take one that has the most complicated sequence, you run it through its paces, and you fix whatever's there, and you copy it 499 times, and then you test them when the commissioning agent goes through it on the functional testing.
So the pre-verification testing would happen. Oh. Thank you.
Nice.
So again, this would be the benefit of pre-verification testing because we would have said everyone to open it.
Then we wouldn't have put it up to begin with.
So with all seriousness, so how do you go about making pre-verification testing a requirement on your project? It's basically the first thing you have to do. You have to buy scope, right? Because even though we said that pre-verification testing benefits everyone, but somebody has to spend time actually performing those activities, which means it's an extra scope. It's a scope. It has to be bought. How do you buy scope? In a spec, right? That's the only way to buy scope. So what you need to do is you need to have a conversation. Well, first of all, depending on the
awesome.
Thank you. Depending on the owner, so the owner may have requirement to conduct pre-verification testing, and then it's simple because it would probably be in the OPR document, which would state, you know, the requirements for the pre-verification testing, for the functional testing. And if it does not, again, you just want to make sure it's in the spec. In the spec, what you want to identify the well, first of all, you want to explain what pre-verification testing is. You want to identify the scope. Now, again, is it going to be done on every piece of equipment? Is it going to be done on the one-of-a-kind equipment? Is it just one-of-a-kind major equipment? So basically, you want to outline all of that. You also want to obviously include it in the commissioning plan. And also, it's a good idea to include examples, right? So, because again, for somebody to assess and buy that scope, they need to know how much time they need to allocate. So therefore, the suggestion would be to provide some examples, right? And say, for complex equipment, these are the typical functional tests. And it doesn't even need to be project specific, right? It can be just, this is what, like a complex equipment, that's what you'd be looking at. Medium complexity, that's the testing script, and then something simple like VV box or fan coil unit, that would be different. So that's number one. Number two is, you want to start talking about pre-verification testing in the first meeting. Well, first of all, if you're part of a meeting with the contractors, right, when you know, before they hired, and there's a pre-bid conference, And if you get a chance to be at that conference and you want to obviously outline all the activities that they're supposed to be buying because they may not even looked at that spec. And then once the project, the construction phase starts and you have your first meeting with the team, with GC, with trades, again, you want to outline, you want to go through that pre-verification test, you want to explain what it is, how it's going to benefit them. And basically that's, if you do that, there's a high likeliness of that's happening. And the last thing I want to add here is that we have some of our clients are general contractors actually, and they are starting seeing these benefits. So what we're promoting here actually does make sense and it does work for them. And now they're making the requirement for the trade contractors to actually perform those tests. So what is the typical process of conducting the pre-verification testing? So obviously, all the activities leading to, to the functional testing, right? All those activities need to be completed, right? So obviously, all the installation, pre-energization, startup activities, all those need to take place. Point-to-point verification, testing and balancing, all that needs to be completed, right? Some of these activities are commissioning, or maybe for commissioning team to witness. Some of those activities are quality control, right? So all of that needs to be completed, and you really, when the team says, yeah, we're ready, or when they say, we think we're ready, and then it would be a good time to then conduct pre-verification testing.
Right. It doesn't replace pre-functional checklists. That still has to get done. So it's not an and or it's not an or. It's both need to be done.
That's a great point, right? It's not to replace something. It's an extra step, right? Also, you probably seen some of the presentation talk about the automated commissioning, how you can employ automated commissioning tool, AFDD tools, to automatically run some of these tests. Well, the pre-verification testing, completion of a pre-verification testing could be a good trigger for those systems to start running, because prior to that event, if you start running the automated commissioning tests, you're going to get so many false negatives or false positive responses. It's not going to be nobody is going to be taking seriously those thousands of issues that you're going to come up with. Then you're going to select equipment, right? That's going to be tested. Now, again, it depends on the scope that you bought, on the scope that GC bought, for example, from the trades, whether it's every piece of equipment. If it's a data center, it's a critical facility, it could be every equipment, right? If it's not a super critical facility, so then maybe you select one of a kind. So every piece, every
office,
equipment
right?
type.
Just my office.
Yeah, exactly. One of a kind, like for every equipment type that has a unique sequence operation, then you just select randomly a instance of that type and you run a test on that. Or as a minimum, you would just look at the critical equipment or major equipment, right? So then you conduct those pre-verification testing using the functional testing scripts. It's exactly the same script, and again, typically those would be conducted by the controls contractor. It is highly encouraged for the entire team to be there, mechanical contractor to be there, maybe testing and balancing. Highly encouraged for the general contractor to be there, one of their MEP
coordinators,
engineers on their side. Maybe if they have on their side like commissioning manager, so it would be good for them to attend. It would be great idea for the commissioning provider to attend that as well, and again, to have somebody representing the owner to be there as well.
And
Right.
again, like Alex said before, if you can bring in the mechanics working on the system, they get a chance to see it also. I know that doesn't happen very often. I know on our campus, it's really hard to schedule some technicians and mechanics to come out, but it's another opportunity, right? And it's always good to get in front of the piece of equipment and learn from it, because they're the ones who are going to take care of it after it's turned over anyway. So,
Right. And so what you want to do there is you want to encourage whoever is performing the testing to document everything. So anything that they feel, something is not right. So they may be reading your sequence operation or your test script, right, that you've generated. Maybe you've used AI to generate that functional test, and maybe it's 80% accurate, maybe not. But anyway, so whatever however you created your functional test, if they find there's a discrepancy of how they program the system, you want them to encourage documenting it.
Yeah. Also,
right?
time of year testing too, right? They won't be able to run a chiller at 100% when it's the middle of winter. So things like that too, that they can say, hey, we couldn't test this. So it's also, when the equipment gets started up. So like I said before, you have to take your test sheet and change it or modify it slightly to accommodate as much as you can of the testing.
Now, every time they document something, that's an opportunity to address it as early as possible, right? So when you find the same issue during the functional test, well, that's a stoppage, right? So you stop the test and you say, okay, well, see you later when it's done. When it's happening during pre-verification testing, okay, well, let's try to figure out what didn't work. Basically anything that is that you've documented, any issues, maybe you took screen captures. That's an opportunity for the contractor then to come to the commissioning provider, sit down with them, and say, okay, this is our we ran through your test scripts. These are the results. Did you expect something else? Did you expect the the graphics screen to demonstrate this? The commissioning provider may say, that's perfect, great. Or they may say, well, actually, maybe we should revisit something. Great, there's time to do it before.
Well, just one correction. It's not to the commissioning agent, it's to the design team, usually. We got to make sure that the commissioning agent doesn't decide what we want, even though they might know
That's
it.
true.
But they still have to go back to the design team. So that's always clear, because that's the problem. Then they come to us, and especially in my role that I'm representing commissioning and the owner, they want to bypass that whole process that the CM has, and it doesn't work. That's where I get in a whole bunch of trouble, and the contractors get in a whole bunch. Steve asked for something, I did it. It's like, well, I don't have any. And I go to every meeting and say, hey, if you think it's a good idea to do what I suggest, do it. If you know it's the right thing and we bought it, do it. If you don't think so, don't come back and put it on me. Because so many times they want to accommodate us, especially us being a big client for a lot of contractors and people. So they all want to go and bend over backwards. And there's a couple, well, there's probably 100, at least 200 people like me on campus in all the different trades. And any one of us can come in and say anything. And you can only imagine what happens to the projects. And we've had cases like that, which I'm not going to do a presentation on that, but so we want to avoid that as much as possible. So it's always the design team and the engineer of record who direct the contractors. The commissioning agent could help figure out the best way to do it or help craft the RFI, but they definitely don't want to be answering it.
Right. All right, you want to talk about real life?
Yeah, so real life, again, we found motors that weren't the right sizes and pump impellers that weren't cut right, things like that. So it's a lot better to know that earlier than later. There's not a lot you can do when you're moving in except run the redundant pump or the redundant fan to try and overcome that till you get the right equipment. And then you gotta put in for a shutdown and wait for that. And nobody wants to start a project or end a project that way. So again, like I said before, a lot of times that dampers, valves, network devices, now with everything being BACnet or Modbus or all the interfaces that they're not ready yet. Oh, here's a page, but then the points don't even match out even. Half the time you get 400 points off a chiller. All I need is runtime and amps. And oh, here's 400. They're not connected right. There's no graphics. It's like too much information sometimes is no good either. So it's making sure that all that is done. We see that a lot. And the big thing with the pre-verification test is that the sequences themselves aren't complete. The engineer writes stuff, but it's no way. Endless loops happen. You put it in heating and never find out when it goes back to cooling unless it goes unoccupied. It's like, but the room's satisfied. It needs to get out. But there's nothing that tells me how to do it. And The control contract just programs what's written there. So a lot of that stuff comes out during these tests. Oh, we went into this mode, and then the damper opened, then we lost control because now we're bringing in outside air and it's not tempered the same as it was before when it was recirculating. Now we lost humidity control. So it's things like that that all come up during the pre-verification test, which is super critical to the operation. And it's not with malice that anybody writes anything, but it just, there's only so much information the engineer could actually document. Everything's field installed or to be, to be designed, built, whatever they call it now.
Or design intent.
Yeah, design intent or means and methods. So, so it's just helping to make sure that somebody really looked at it before we test it, before we fail the functional performance test. Yeah, and then again, that we have time to do it. So costly rework is a lot better during construction than when it's our building. And it's also a lot better to do it before those last 2 weeks of the project, let's say commissioning. And it helps the team build cohesiveness, right? The CM or GC owns telling us that we're ready. So sometimes they don't have the expertise, so they need the contractors to be there. So it helps build or continue that relationship, and it gets stronger. They end up working together a lot better at the end of the project than at the beginning of the project.
So I can add an example from real life. We have a client that is using our product, and they create pre-verification tests in a software. And when they were communicating to their trade contractor on the requirement of pre-functional tests, the contractor did not hear that well, language barrier maybe, and by mistake, they've completed pre-verification tests. They have completed like 80% of pre-verification tests, but they have not completed a single checklist, pre-functional checklist. So the commissioning provider asked, why aren't you completing pre-functional checklists? They said, well, what do you mean? We've been doing that for a long time. So they open checklist section in a software, and they say, well, look, they're all zeros. They said, no, right here, pre-verification tests. So they said, oh, okay, all right, we're going to stop pre-verification tests at 80%, and we're going to go back and complete checklists. And they did that, but guess what happened during the functional testing? Those 80% of equipment that have been pre-tested, no problems. The rest of the equipment that they did not finish pre-testing, that's where the problems occurred. So, and it's a real life example. I'm not making it up. Maybe just the numbers, but it's a true story, because again, when somebody sits in a relaxed atmosphere, right, and there's no eyes, there's no finger pointing, and again, they pre-testing and they're fixing the issues on their own time, and so that's a completely different result.
Yeah, again, so based on the pre-verification test, I just put in a couple samples of some RFIs that came out from it. Some of those endless loops, pumps not working, desired sequence for control valves because it wasn't shown, a modulating valve that nobody knew what it did, but it was installed in our system. Things like that, we find that quite a bit. And then, even energy wheels now, did it have 2 wheels? Did it have 3 wheels? When did they all start? When did they overlap? Things like that. So it's really the nuts and bolts of things that never get truly documented. And everybody takes for granted that they work, and sometimes they do. And you guys don't know it, and sometimes they don't, and then it takes years to find. And in our buildings, everything's made to last for a long time. So we end up hearing about it from our technicians who go in and go, this heat wheel never worked, and now it's like 10 years we've had the building. And then there's nothing I can say at that point, right? I'm sorry, and try and help them resolve it. But all the contractors are gone. It's been us for 10 years, and it just takes time sometimes to find these things. Oh, it only happens on a Tuesday that we have the provost there or something. Whatever, but eventually our mechanics are pretty good, and they come back and they don't ever let me forget stuff. So Um, it's always an adventure.
So the takeaways here, basically, again, pre-verification testing, you're aligning the teams, right? You are making sure that it's a civil discussion of what has failed during the testing, okay? It's preventing rework. The rework is going to happen anyway, but you're preventing the rework happening those 2 last weeks during the functional testing. Streamlining the commissioning process. Also enhancing quality control process, because if you think about this, quality control and commissioning, they kind of go hand in hand. Again, commissioning is validation of quality control. So, but encouraging the contractors to have pre-verification testing to be part of their quality control process. And again, if you're successful in promoting this pre-verification testing, if you're successful encouraging it, then you'll definitely see the benefits. And are you going to be able to avoid all the issues during functional testing? Never, right? You're still going to have things, hopefully, but it's going to be much smoother, right?
Maybe even get another project because of it. So.
Exactly. So yeah, that's basically that. I saw a bunch of hands, but yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm struggling with the so close pre-verification testing, pre-functional testing, and the functional performance testing. A language that puts a lot of sequence, and we get confused saying it. Has there been any thought to a different name than pre-verification,
Yeah.
pre-functional? Just people are already confused with that acronym.
Yeah. So English is not my first language, you can probably tell. I get confused all the time with the language, you know. I s-
Also like the system verification checklist.
right.
Right.
So
Right.
got like all of these acronyms.
Yeah.
It's like,
So I sit on several ASHRAE committees, and there's a not appendixes, annexes, right? Annexes different from appendixes. That they're the ones that are free from ASHRAE, and they apply, the information applies to every, to more than one guideline or a standard, right? And those are annexes. And there's an annex that talks about the checklists, and it acknowledges like all these different types of checklists there are in the world, right? Somebody says construction checklist, somebody says pre-functional.
Startup.
I mean, it becomes
verification
really
checklist.
confusing.
Yeah.
And on top of it, somebody has a problem with words functional performance testing. Why? Because are you really testing performance, or are you just testing functionality? It's two different things, right? So anyway, totally agree.
Yeah.
The language is...
But one way to help that is to have a really good readiness matrix, right? That listed out, like there was a sample on one of the tables that showed, and it doesn't matter what you call it, but it's a column, and somebody should say, hey, this column is blank. And it's kind of, when you look at the one on the slides, you'll see that it's kind of in order that the contractor's doing, then the last one is the one the commissioning agent does. So in order to get to this one, you need to fill out the other one. So whatever you call it, it's just a tool to help. Obviously, you know, throughout the project, you got to keep reminding them what they all are. But some type of readiness table or something to help you determine the steps that are followed. Also, you know, the same thing you use to track the project, and add that in, and make sure the CM is responsible to run it, because that goes a long way, or the GC, sorry.
So just to add quickly, so like in our product, when you name a test, you can name it anything you want. So you gives you the ability not name it functional performance test or FPT or PFC. You can call it whatever you want. It's really flexible. But yeah, that's a challenge.
So let's just say you functionally test the project the first time.
Okay.
You come up with 20 things that don't work. Come again the second time, 15 still doesn't work. How many more times do you keep coming back, and what is something to do to
So
discourage?
Right.
So again, when you're conducting your functional test, the commissioning provider conducts functional test. That is a validation of a successful quality control process. Okay? If you find a problem during the functional test, that means something failed during the quality control, right? So if you are finding tons of issues during the functional testing and you have to retest many times, again, that's on the contractor, right? And you will be retesting it as many times as needed so that you can then validate that, yep, now the system operates per the OPR, design documents, and the commissioning plan.
And if you didn't have the pre-verification test on it, and you're the commissioning agent, that happens after the first or second time, you should go back and have a discussion that they need to do it. It shouldn't be on the commissioning agent to do it 10 times to correct all the contractor's problems. So that's a way to educate them that, hey, there's this opportunity. Why don't you do pre-verification tests, do it on one, and then we'll come in and follow you. So especially if they didn't buy it outright, but you see it happen, then you raise your hand. Hey, we didn't carry to come in 15 times to go through your punch list. You know what I mean? Hopefully that doesn't happen, but when it does, somebody has to step up, and if it's not, if you don't feel comfortable, then go to the people who hired you and talk to them. Because my role at MIT is to do that. When I'm at a meeting and something doesn't go right, I'm like, hey, we're done. Everybody leave. Training sessions I've canceled testing. If people aren't ready, we're not wasting everybody's time. Because my commissioning agent's gonna come back and charge me. And then my boss is gonna say, we didn't carry that. And then the PM's gonna give me crap. We're not building another building here. No, I'm trying to finish your building that isn't working. So it's the same thing, even though we all go through the same issues. But it's important to make sure that you have that good relationship with whoever hires you and that they have an understanding of it. Hopefully it doesn't get there, but every project has problems. Like Alex said, we're not gonna come to a place where our functional tests don't have any issues to resolve.
And so, but the pre-verification testing, that is a best way to address the situation you bring up, right? Because controls contractor runs the test, they find, 20 different issues. Great, that's fine, that's not a problem. It's still part of the quality control. They found something, maybe something was not terminated properly, point to point wasn't done, whatever, sequence operation got revised. They're going to address it, they're going to rerun it. Still problems, not a problem, it's quality control.
And you still have time to fix it where we're not looking at it right away.
And then, right. Yeah, go ahead. They are running them themselves. That's the biggest difference, right? So functional test is you have the commissioning provider standing there and directing the controls contractor to perform certain action, trigger certain situation, right? Pre-verification testing is when, like you said, they're doing it on their own time, right? And when they're finding issues, that is the internal quality control process. They're finding issues like, again, when, let's say, controls contractor installing wiring or installing control panels or sensors. So they have a process. They have a most likely they're going to have a checklist to verify that everything is installed properly, that you ran the wire correctly, you terminated it correctly, you did your point-to-point, right? You verify that everything's terminated correctly. Pre-verification testing is another step during the quality control process, right? So it just basically you helping them to, by adding this additional step to quality control process, to better be prepared for the functional test. It's like coming to an exam with an open book, like I said before, right?
And if you need help, from the project's point of view, it's best to engage the CM because they own at the end before commissioning agents show up. They're the ones who say, yeah, we're ready. And then what happens when you show up and they're not ready? Depends on who the commissioning agent is and how many times you've been there. But if they buy in on it and they guarantee it, then you could go back to them because they're at the end they're the ones who are accountable for this test. It's on their scope. It only helps them. Sometimes it's harder to pull them across the finish line or to show them that, but you got to keep trying, and eventually they get it because they see the benefit. Once they realize that, you know, the customer didn't really see what they fixed behind the curtain, that's a lot better than us seeing it.
Oh, absolutely. And again, just think what I mentioned at the beginning about the risk, right? So it's all about how do you manage risk? Not you, but the contractor, right? So GC needs to manage risk. And so when you bring a tool to the project and say, I'm encouraging this because this is going to help you,
Best practices,
help your team,
right.
to acknowledge, to understand what's really happening, right? And then so if you can build that relationship, and again, the best thing to do it would be that first meeting when everybody's still talking to each other, they still like each other.
We'll do anything you
right?
want.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's right. So that's.
Go ahead.
It appears though that, I think a dry run is always great. I work in pharmaceutical power plants and MEP, regular MEP stuff. But in looking at some of the things that's done there, I see two weak points. First of all, if somebody's done a good factory acceptance test, and if somebody's done a good PFC, they should be catching that. So that already shows a kind of a weakness in some of that quality control there. Because before you do the PFC, there's the internal QA that a contractor has to do.
Absolutely.
The electricians have to wire it up correctly and say that it's properly torqued, hydrostatic test is done, whatever the MEP division is. There you have tests that get done that during the commission PFC process, we just ask that they're done. We don't necessarily see a hydrostatic test or watch the megger or anything like
Right.
that. So if they're not doing that, then obviously there's things that are going to miss. The other part that I see that might be a little bit of a weakness is that when you're doing a PVT, for a functional test, you're very robust about identifying what's the problem. I'm not sure that they're doing a PVT. From what I've seen on the projects that I've worked on, and I haven't worked on that many with PVT, is that if they find a problem, they're not necessarily documenting it so that you get a true baseline. They could fail something 5 times, but you don't hear about it. You only hear about it that they fixed it, or especially that you're not always there, that they may or may not have a generic problem with a piece of equipment not working correctly. Hey, we had a problem, we fixed it. You get to the functional test, that same problem could have developed because you didn't know that it was a
Right.
generic, that there was a trend involved. So how do you address that? Because both of those things, if somebody did a good PFC following a good FAT, everything should be done, and you are going to find it in a functional test. To me, the only big thing there is just to move the functional tests more forward in the schedule, so they're not just at the end of the job.
So I can sit in at home. I can open my app on my phone, and I can answer every checklist and PVT directly right from my phone, watching a TV. Just click, done. Okay, so then when I do that, and there's a timestamp, date stamp, and a name stamp on that it actually occurred, and then when I'm now involved in the functional testing, and the commissioning provider is standing and asking me to do something, and it's not working, so the commissioning provider is opening the PVTs and saying, well, hang on a second. On this date, this time, 7 p.m. Friday night, you told us that you've tested that functionality. Here's your signature. And you said it worked. Did it actually work? And the next thing, you're just basically handing off this problem to the general contractor. And then the general contractor steps in, but now they have documentation, right? They can then sit down with their trade contractor and say, hey, listen, what are you doing? Why is it not working? You told us that you've documented everything. And so those conversations are not pleasant, right? But unfortunately, it is what it is. And when you provide tools for completing the checklist, pre-verification test, when you explain the consequences, because you say, look, when you enter the information, it all gets documented, so we'll know who it is, right? The GC will know. And again, you're stressing out that this is not necessarily, it's part of the commissioning process, but it is more part of the quality control process, right? So, and again, a lot of times GC, when they understand the benefit, they will
They push for it.
push for
It
that.
benefits them.
That's exactly right.
Well, one of the things I guess this works when you're doing facility grid or CX alloy or something. If you're not using those programs, the PVT program itself then could have some fairly good, it might be a good program, but it's only a good program to work if it's working kind of with those.
No, you can take
Absolutely.
a hard copy though too. Like you can
Absolutely.
take.
You could do hard copy.
The hard copy, because
Yeah.
if you do that with PFC, the guy signs off it.
No, but you give it out as the script that the commissioning agent's going to use, and it's hard. They can all sign it. You can do it as, you know, I've been on projects where they have an Excel sheet and it goes through the steps that the commissioning agent's going to do. Yeah. So then, but if you're finding problems and people sign off,
Specific thing.
yeah.
It's very hard to trend that thing, to go back and recollect.
That's
Yeah.
true. You can. It's not like a
Yeah, yeah,
foolproof.
right.
I can successfully recommend conducting pre-verification testing using spreadsheets. It's really, the software, regardless what software you may be using, it doesn't matter. It will help you be more efficient and so on and so forth. But you can do the same thing. When I started doing commissioning back, I don't know, 2012, whatever, there was no software. So, it worked. Right, so software is not.
You can pencil whip anything.
Exactly. Right. Right. So.
Yeah, and if that, that's a different issue. But yeah, you hope that the contractors are telling you, and it only benefits them. You know what I mean? The other thing. Yeah. Yeah. But they go through 5 different.
The commissioning guy actually does the checklist.
Right. But it's validation. They do the validation too. So it's a whole.
Whoever the contractor
Right.
is doing, he's not responsible for saying his work's done. The third-party commissioning guy.
Right.
is responsible,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
bridges that.
But there's usually 2 or 3 steps in the pharmaceutical before the commissioning agent, whereas in MEP stuff, it's just commissioning. They own everything. And how many times in MEP commissioning do they calibrate a temp sensor nowadays? It either works when you plug it in or it reads 327 or 0. If it's reading, in the old days they used to float, they don't float anymore. Now if you plug them in and they read, nobody sits there with a calibrated sensor and calibrates their other sensor. They put one in to check that it's close. If it's in plus or 0.2 degrees, they say it's fine. So
Yeah.
it's a whole different.
Last thing to add to this. So what we're seeing now, that if you do commissioning of data centers, right? There's levels 0 to 6, and level 4 is functional testing. So what we're seeing now is that a lot of times data center owners will start breaking level 4 into 4A and 4B, where 4A becomes pre-verification testing, and it's a prerequisite before the functional testing, so before 4B. So
Thank
I think
you
we're
all.
done. Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Good job. Good job for the